So, now that The Acolyte is finally over, I wanted to make a video breaking down and ranking all of the Star Wars TV shows we have gotten in live action from Disney, from best to worst, or from worst to best. So yes, I said live action because this will not be including the Clone Wars or Rebels, but if you really want to know, they would probably rank number 1 and close to number 2 for Rebels. I'd have to think about it. So this will just be all the live action shows that Disney has produced over the last 4 to 5 years, of which we have about 8, I think. Yes, I have 8 listed here, and that includes me splitting up the Mandalorian season. So each season of the Mandalorian will be its own thing here. I'm not going to treat it as one show. It'll be 3 different seasons. Let's jump right into it. But before I do, please make sure to like this video, subscribe for more, and turn on notifications. That could really help me out. I would really much appreciate it. All right, let's get right into it. The newest show in the Star Wars universe, The Acolyte, is a total stinking pile of shit. Just gonna put it out there right from the start. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that like this show. I am not one of them. I am one of the dozens and dozens of people on the internet complaining about this show because it is just not good at all. I have a lot of problems with this show, and I made a bunch of videos of it on my channel where I actually go into depth on what my issues were, but here I'm just going to kind of list off my base issues. First things first, this show does do some stuff right. I think the lightsaber fights are really, really cool, and I think the main Sith guy is pretty interesting. My main issue with this show is its position in the overall universe. I feel like this show does a lot of things that make you question the overall story of the Star Wars universe. I don't want to say it breaks canon, because I know how offended people get, and people go in the defensive mode, and they'll write essays upon essays explaining how it doesn't actually break canon, if you really look at it. But there are just stuff that are head-scratching things, like including the Sith in a High Republic show doesn't really make sense. Like a character turning to the dark side after hanging out with Kylo Ren with abs for a couple days. Like, it just doesn't really make too much sense to me. The show has really laughable writing, and some episodes that are just cringeworthy to, like, I mean, they are some of the most cringy stuff I have seen in film or television all year. It is remarkable how bad it is. The acting here is nothing crazy. I really like Squid Game dude. I can't think of his name, but the guy from Squid Game, he's awesome as Jedi Soul, even though I don't love the character. I think Daphne Keane was also really great in her fight scene, and I just don't think her character and her talents as an actress was utilized enough for this show. I like the idea of the High Republic and setting a show in that timeline, but this is just not it. This is not what Star Wars fans wanted, or what they asked for, or what they were interested in, and overall, outside of the lightsaber fights, there's just not much here that is entertaining or interesting. I actually only watched the last few episodes the week the finale came out. I stopped watching the show because it was torture, having to sit through it every Tuesday. It got that bad. So obviously I'm not a fan of The Acolyte. Let's move on. Obi-Wan Kenobi, I really thought about putting this one last just because of how disappointing it was. I think this show, quality-wise, is a little bit better than The Acolyte because it does more with a much, much smaller budget. And it has some ideas that I actually appreciate and some things that could have been done better if it was, I don't know, maybe written a little bit better or handled in a different format. But overall, this is a show that I was looking forward to more so than any Star Wars thing ever. As soon as I heard that they were going to be doing Star Wars spin-offs other than the main films, I hope to God they would bring back Ewan McGregor to play this character because he is so kind of nostalgic for me, so iconic for me from my childhood. He was my favorite character in anything when I was growing up watching these movies. So this idea of him coming back and having this story set between Episode 3 and Episode 4 seemed like an obvious idea, and then when we finally got it, the show just ends up being kind of a fart. There's a lot about this show that I don't exactly like. I don't like the idea of having an entire story between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader between Episode 3 and 4. I've always liked the idea of a Star Wars fan of Obi-Wan had not seen Vader until he sees him in the Death Star in Episode 4. There's almost poetry to that they don't see each other that whole time, and then that moment in Episode 4 when they come together is so much more powerful if they had not seen each other since Mustafar. This obviously takes away that canon, and you get like this weird shoehorn story where Obi-Wan and Vader eventually fight, and Obi-Wan kind of wins again, and doesn't kill Vader again, and is now liable for the billions of people that die because of Vader after this. It's just silly. The lightsaber fights are just not very good at all. There's a lot of shaky cam in this show. The budget is just not there, so a lot of the CGI is poor. They try shoehorning in another villain that gets like a weird redemption arc. Reva, I think her name was, and it It does not work at all. I do like Leia's inclusion. I think her character's cool, and I think it actually adds a lot of depth to the character in episode 4 and in the original trilogy and her relationship with Obi-Wan. I like that. That works. Overall, I think this should have been a movie. I think it should have been a movie about Obi-Wan fighting Darth Maul. Darth Maul hunting down Obi-Wan on Tatooine. That was the story there. They unfortunately kind of did it in Rebels and rushed it in Rebels, and I think it would have been better to center a whole movie about that story. I think it would have been so good, but unfortunately we get what we get, and we don't get upset. We get a little upset, but that's okay. Mando Season 3 is another one that's here mainly because it was just so disappointing, especially after the first 2 seasons of Mando that I'll be talking about in a little bit that were so good. Mando Season 3 had a lot going for it, but this season just ended up being kind of a nothing burger. Like, I don't have much to say about it, both negative or positive, because it's just so forgettable. Like, what happened in Mando Season 3? I think the whole point of this plot is that the Mandalorians are trying to take back Mandalore. That's the whole quest of this season, which is a really cool idea and could have been done so much better, but there's just something about this season that's missing. Something that worked in the first 2 that's not really working here. I don't know if it's the relationship between Mando and Grogu, which was really the core of the first 2 seasons, but here it's just kind of pushed to the background. I don't know if it's Bo-Katan technically being the main protagonist and her just not being as interesting as Mando. I don't know if it's Giancarlo Esposito's character going from being a very smart kind of planner of a villain, more of a Lex Luthor than a Bane, to becoming like a Bane. He just gets in a big armor suit and starts fighting the Mandalorians. Like, it just kind of gets goofy. This season just didn't really work for me at all. Of course, we had that weird Jack Black episode, and Lizzo, right? Lizzo was in it. It's just easily the worst season of the show. I don't have much more to say about it. I actually don't hate the Book of Boba Fett. It's not great. It's not even really good, but I do have some stuff about... But there are some things about this season of television that I really like, that I love about the character of Boba Fett. Now, Boba Fett is obviously one of the most iconic characters in Star Wars, and making a show or a movie about him was an obvious choice. Now, is this the show or movie that Star Wars fans wanted? No. Mainly because Boba Fett, we've always seen him as this badass bounty hunter. He's the son of this dude, Jango Fett, that got killed by a Jedi, and he's kind of pissed about that, and he's just this angry dickhead who's also a bounty hunter, right? Whereas in this show, we get a version of Boba Fett who's, of course, gotta be redeemed. He's gotta be the good guy, the hero. So he's just a very nice guy trying to be a mob boss, but not a mean mob boss, a very nice mob boss. And because of that, it just takes away the allure of how badass Boba Fett is. It just kind of makes it stink a little bit. But there are some good things about this show. I mean, the Mando episode is great, even though it's just randomly shoehorned in. Some of the fight scenes work. I actually think the inclusion of Cad Bane, I thought that was really cool. I think he's an awesome character. Yet again, just one that I'm not really that interested in talking more about. I'd like to see a second season of this, to be completely honest with you, where they kind of do more with the character of Boba Fett. They maybe let him be more grounded and more raw in what we think Boba Fett actually is, instead of being this kind of good guy, you know, uncle that he comes off as being. He's just a cool uncle, right? I really like Ahsoka, and I feel like I'm one of the few people that actually liked it. A lot of people shit on this show. They really shit on it. I enjoyed the hell out of Ahsoka. It was like the closest I have ever gotten to feeling the nostalgic vibes of the prequels in modern day. The show does a lot right. First off, Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka is a great casting. She's awesome as this older, wiser version of this character. I also think all the castings of the Rebel characters worked out well. The Rebel characters translate from animation to screen seamlessly. It's almost like this is just a continuation of Rebels, which I love. I think it's really cool. I think Grand Admiral Thrawn is a badass villain, and his whole introduction is so cool. I think Baylan Skoll is an awesome character. It sucks that Ray Stevenson did pass away, so I don't know if we're ever going to get this character again or if he's going to be recast, but this whole journey they're going on, that they're being called by the Force in this random, you know, new galaxy, that there's some kind of larger power out there, is so intriguing. That is the intrigue of this show and this universe at the moment, and I'm excited to see where that goes. I like a lot of the lightsaber fights here. I mean, the way that they bring back Hayden Christensen's Anakin, I thought was absolutely stunning and metaphorical and beautiful. Overall, I enjoy this show. I don't dislike it anywhere near as much as a lot of people in the fandom dislike this show. I had a good time with it. I still enjoy it. There are some issues. It's not perfect. Of course, the 3 seasons ahead of this are a lot better, but I'm excited to see what they do in a season 2. And Andor. This is a show that took me a while to actually get through because I'm gonna be honest, I did not dig the first few episodes, but this is a show that is more different, the most different than anything else they have done in the Star Wars universe. It is a grounded, gritty show about rebellion, about war. It's essentially a prequel to Rogue One and that sort of tone and style, but I would even say this is a little bit more gritty and more dark. As we follow the origins of a rebellion, we watch this world that is being crushed by this authoritarian empire, this evil empire that's oppressing people, and we watch as the people inside of this world slowly build up this urge to resist, to rebel. Diego Luna as Andor is just such a great casting, and this character is so great. He's so much better than even in Rogue One, which is, I love his character in that movie, but here he is still just so much more grounded, and you really get that kind of vibe of, he's been through some shit, and you get that vibe in Rogue One, but now you're seeing the shit he's been through. Stellan Skarsgård adds so much to everything he touches, and he's so good here. His voice, his power, his ability to sell this badassery, but also kind of this unsureness. He's so good. This is a great season of TV. Of course, it's unfinished. This is supposed to be a two-part, two-season thing, and we're getting season 2, I believe, later this year or early next year, so I'm excited to see that when it comes. Andor is great. It's Star Wars that does not need Jedi and lightsabers, and when you can pull that off, that means you have great characters and a great story, and that's what we need. Take the Jedi and lightsabers out of it so you can learn how to write characters in this universe, and then put the lightsabers and Jedi back in there once you have the great characters. That's how you're supposed to do it. That's how we can make this universe, make Star Wars great again. The Mandalorian Season 1 is the first Star Wars show we had ever gotten. The first live-action show on Disney+. It was very much an experimental sort of breakthrough in this universe, and to me, it still holds up as being one of the best. I remember when this first came out, nobody really knew what it was going to be. We knew it was going to be about a Mandalorian, a bounty hunter of sorts, and we knew we were going to be diving into that sort of mythos of the Star Wars universe, but outside of that, we didn't actually know what the direction of the show was, how it was going to look, how it was going to feel, if it was going to feel cheap or feel big budget like the movies. Fortunately, you know, it feels kind of like this middle place between small budget TV shows and movies. It feels big enough, but still smaller than the movies for it to not overtake those things. But I remember watching this for the first time, and at the end of the first episode, when you meet Grogu, you meet Baby Yoda, and it immediately clicked to you what this show was going to be. The Last of Us, Star Wars. And as soon as that clicked, it was like, I'm in. I'm in for this show about this dude protecting this Baby Yoda as they bounce between worlds. Every episode is like a new planet where they have a new adventure to go on. It works, and it works really well. This season is incredibly entertaining, and being introduced into the world of the Mandalorians and what Baby Yoda is and how he relates, and Pedro Pascal becoming like this fatherly figure and how it all builds to a really great finale. This works. This season is really good. It stands on its own still to this day, and it sets up a season 2 that we're about to start talking about. And then there's Mando Season 2. Now, the one complaint I'll hear about the season is that it's all nostalgia bait. This entire season of television is just, here, look at this shiny thing that you guys love about Star Wars. Isn't that cool? Remember when this was here in the 80s? And although, yes, that's true, this is also the first time in the Star Wars universe that they actually did really pull at the nostalgia strings. So we get a continuation of Season 1 when Mando and Grogu on the run. They're jumping planet from planet on their adventure, and it is still as witty, as fun, and as action-packed as ever. But now we get to meet some new characters. Bo-Katan from Clone Wars. We get to meet Ahsoka from Clone Wars. All these great characters. And everybody gets involved in this adventure with a bunch of great episodes that have their own little subplots on these planets. People like Bill Burr coming in and giving great performances out of nowhere. And it all builds up to an epic finale with Giancarlo Esposito, who is this badass villain, this main Empire guy who's not, you know, a fighter like he is in Mando Season 3, but just this very strategic thinker, which is always awesome. I love villains like that. And then you get Luke Skywalker, which is still the most I have marked out as a Star Wars fan in probably the last decade. What a moment it was seeing Luke appear in that episode for the first time. Completely unexpected, but amazing. And that finale was so good, and it opened the door for so many different things that could have been done in the Star Wars universe. Luke taking Grogu, what an emotional moment. I hope they don't undo this in one episode of the Book of Boba Fett. This was a perfect finale, and honestly, if Mandalorian ended right here, or if the show as a whole ended right there, I would have been okay with it. We have had continuations. I don't really like where they're taking the story, but at the end of the day, we still have Season 2 of The Mandalorian, which is great Star Wars television, and you can make a strong argument it's the best thing that Disney has done with Star Wars so far. Thank you guys for watching. That's my list. Let me know what you think of it down below. Let me know your list down. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more, turn on notifications to see everything when I post it, and I'll see you in the next one.